a lot of guys, even if you're well endowed,
Mhm.
have a hard time performing. Even guys who I know have been doing it for years and years and years still will have a hard time performing sometimes. Did you ever experience anything like that, or were you
Oh,
always kind of a natural?
no, I mean, no. I mean, yeah, I've been natural, but I'm saying, have I failed? No, have I failed? Yes.
But
The
it
reason
was because, okay, just for an example, Dredd would have gotten into the industry way earlier, but one of his first scenes he couldn't finish,
Mm-hmm.
and that I think he said he took 3-4 years off before he revisited it,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was really interesting because if you do your first scene and everything goes smoothly, you might be
Yeah.
more likely to get into it. If you do your first scene and it doesn't go well, you might just get frustrated, right?
Yeah. Well, look, I got to say that I can't speak to anybody else's, beginnings, humble beginnings or otherwise. In my case, by the time I got to LA in '98, I had been in the minor leagues, if you will, since for almost 3 years of recreational activity, where there would be a camera, maybe not. I had been in circumstances where I had been being paid to be there to execute sex, right? So by the time I got to the major leagues out here in LA, I was already it's like paying like a baseball player, because how many baseball players go from high school to the league? Most of them spend a number of years in the minors. So by the time they get to the league, they're older, but what? They play longer. Whereas sometimes a person can try and jump from high school straight to the NBA, or early in high college straight to the NBA, and they fail because they didn't have the bush league years to make it. You can't even go from high school to the NFL because you got to get your man weight up.
Right.
That is inscribed in the beginning. They know you're going to get mowed over by a guy that's got 3 kids and a mortgage. You're 18, you're going to stop this guy, right?
Right.
So for me, porno was like that. I had a chance to become while being considered a rookie. I was well trained for doing it in the major leagues. So, have I taken my lumps over the years? Fantastic failures.
Really?
I've been a part. Oh my God! I mean, the type of failures where, had I had like the medical option of what's available today,
Right.
I would have taken 2 or 3. Give me a handful like Skittles. I've been in circumstances.
Right.
so.
Because people don't realize there's so much about porn, in particular from the male perspective, that the average person would not expect.
Shocking.
And so when I start saying that a fairly large percentage of the time when I've had to hire male talent to have sex with somebody else on camera, that it doesn't work, and that in some situations these guys are very, very experienced. They've been doing it for a long time. In some situations, they're like blatantly on a bunch of dick pills.
Yeah.
And still have a hard time with it. That could be very hard for people to wrap their head around how that could happen. And a lot of people don't seem to understand the magnitude of that failure at times. I've had people tell me about scenes that were shot in foreign locations, places that were extremely expensive to rent for a day or whatever. They fly out. The girl has to be gone the next day. And once you start to, if you fuck up and everything is holistic and the girls are cool about it and everything, and then it can be it could be one thing to recover and get yourself back into the mentality, but that amount of pressure of knowing, if I don't finish this in the next couple hours, everybody's going to be mad at me. The girls are annoyed, the director's annoyed, I'm not going to necessarily get paid what I was supposed to get paid, etc. Like, that amount of pressure can make it unbelievably hard for a guy to perform when he's in the heat of the moment.
Yeah. Well, all those things are 100% true. But I have to say that at the commercial level, you're paid to execute. You know what I'm saying? The name of my company is Mercenary Pictures, and the reason why I called it Mercenary Pictures because I always fashioned myself the ultimate mercenary. Right, I'm being paid to execute.
I will get the job done.
I'll get the job done.
Yeah.
You call me in if I agree to do it. Now, commensurate to that is the pressure and the obligation. One of the things that people don't take into consideration is that it doesn't get any easier the better you become in the business. People are like, "Oh, Lex, you got a chance to work with the the most beautiful girls in the industry, what have you, but my obligation might be 10 times greater than another individual who is working with a lesser female, and then perhaps a less pressure-filled circumstance. Because if there's a commitment on an A-list girl, the company is going to spend this much more money on her, then they have to go all in and hire a guy that makes sure that they can maximize the utility that they're spending. So I'm the type of person that has always gotten hired to work with the most expensive of talent in the most difficult of circumstances, which usually means the most beautiful circumstance. But that's the most difficult because there's so much more obligation. If the company has overspent on location and they're high spending on the girl, they need to get this shit done. So yeah. But the thing is, you know, I signed up for it. So if it's an anal scene and I don't like anal, if it's an anal scene and I chose to show up, I stick my dick in her ass. It's not clean. I can't complain. It's her ass. Number one,
Right.
Shit happens.
But then, even beyond that, people might not understand how this goes. Is you've got to get hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes that might take a guy a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Then you put your dick in her butt. There is some residue. This isn't just bad because it's kind of yucky for you as the guy. It's very important that this not be shown on camera. People don't want to see that. So now the girl has to go. Right, that's a different genre. But the girl has to go and get clean. She's got to deal with her whole thing. That might take 15 minutes. And so you, the guy who just worked fairly hard to get hard, now you're in the position of having to, you know, stare at the wall, jerking yourself off, and keep yourself in the same frame of mind. That's not always easy.
It's not easy, but here's the thing. A male performer's got to get to the point where he has, as a professional, he has to have the ability to get his own engine turned on and motivate himself. Self-motivation is perhaps the greatest skill set, and it's not physical; it's purely mental. See what I'm saying? You know, I think nowadays, compared to when I started, it's more difficult because you have a greater number of guys that can do it. When I started, it was a very few number of guys that can actually do it.
Really? Okay.
And so if you were one of the guys that could do it, you were a made man. Very quickly, you became a made man. Now it's much more challenging because there's a lot of guys that can do it. For whatever myriad of reasons, a lot of guys can now do it. So, it's never an easy thing. And I think that a lot of guys that last past that actually make it past that time of attrition where a lot of guys wash out early. If you can make it, much like a broker, if you can make it, and maybe, if you can make it to the second or third time shooting for the same director, then you've made it. Because most guys are never given a second chance.
Yeah.
Maybe if you're lucky, you'll get a second chance from a director. So a guy can shoot for every director at least once. And it's when you're shooting for a second or third time, then you're in there. But when I say it's mental, I think that you have to have a mental capacity to charge your own batteries, because you're not owed that from the girl you're working with.
Right. In many cases, they would be happy to help assist you.
Well, yes, and a lot of the women are beautiful,
but you can't really rely on that or expect that because some women have different arrangements with their boyfriend or husband or whatever, so you don't want to make them feel uncomfortable or feel pressured to help you get there, even though they quite often will, from what I hear.
Well, look, I make it known, I'm very, very upfront with the girl. Like, when I meet the girl, if I don't know her, I'll be, hey, how you doing? We'll talk, whatever. I'll try to establish some chemistry. And I'll say, well, look, I'm really glad that we're here to do what we're about to do. And so we've already addressed the fact that we're here to. It's not going to be a surprise. I don't want you to be surprised when I do certain things that are part of what I do in the scene. But it's different styles. Do
you remember the first time that you took any kind of medication in order to perform the job, or what year that might have been? And did that really fundamentally change the game for you, or was it just a change of the game in general?
Oh my God. The first time I had been introduced to, well, I'll tell you the first time I had seen the use of chemical was around, I would say maybe 2000. We were in Prague with Anabolic and we're shooting a gangbang on the World Sex Store. And there was 5 Americans and 10 of the Euro guys. And after the scene briefing, before the Euro guys all had fanny packs and they went in different directions, and in their fanny packs were I guess the mechanisms of action they used at that time, and so that's something, and that that's something that I never got into.
You're talking about shooting up.
Yeah.
Still something I'm very curious about that I haven't really bothered to do any extreme deep dives into. But you do hear from a lot of people. For those who don't know what we're talking about, it's like some sort of medication.
Yeah.
You sort of prick your penis with it. It's typically for elderly people. It's not a prick.
It's not a prick.
Oh, okay.
Nah, man. Look, I mean, well, okay. So Cavette, as is known, is a chemical that had been created for paraplegics.
Right.
And not necessarily the elderly, but more specifically paraplegics. And as a chemical, what it literally does, it expands the capillaries for greater maintenance of blood flow. And then it essentially freezes itself, and it's
apparently unbelievably effective.
Well, look, you're talking about expanding your capillaries greater than they ever would have been possible naturally, and then locking in that greater capacity until it dissipates. But to do it, it's a real shot that they're taking at the base of their dick. Now, my problem is does that not have a medical implication? Whereas if I knew a girl was doing anything with the needle other than getting her blood drawn, I would have an issue with that. Twice a month, I get my blood drawn for our talent. That's in my arm. I'm not going to put a needle in my dick. See what I'm saying? I'm 54, bro. Let me tell you something. If I got to the point where I had to do that, I'm sorry, I'm done. I'm done.
Step back,
I'm done. But so that's not taking away from the guys that do. I understand that there's a greater pressure now because, like I said a second ago, there are so many more guys that can do it that the level up is becoming such that guys are doing that. See what I'm saying? Like if I only had to worry about a limited number of black guys that were shooting black on black and interracial, right? Were 5 other dudes. So a producer director would have the option of 5 other guys, Rico Strong in my ear, obviously Mr. Marcus, obviously, whether Richard Mann, what I'm saying, killers, bro. I'm not talking about weak motherfuckers. I'm talking about guys that masters at this shit, right? But now, instead of 5 other dudes, there's 10 other guys that are killers, right? So it's much more competitive. And so guys are taking the next level up to outdistance. There's powerful dudes out here. Rob Piper, Hollywood Cash, Dredd. See, because now not only is it a performance thing on a competitive level, but because you have a broader pool of access, there are guys that are sizable. Now you have guys that can perform and also bring size. So the marketplace has gotten much more competitive and much more difficult to get employed.